The night begins quietly, the way most horror stories do. The streets are drenched in rain, the amber streetlights flickering like dying candles, painting the empty sidewalks with a dull, rhythmic glow. A single car hums past, its headlights slicing through the mist before vanishing into the dark. The narrator's voice drifts softly through this emptiness, calm, steady, almost nostalgic. They speak of trust, of youth, of the small, easy jobs that teenagers take to earn a little extra money. Babysitting, a word that once meant safety, innocence, and warmth. You watch someone's child, make them dinner, read them stories, and put them to bed. But tonight, those memories begin to feel fragile, like old film reels burning at the edges. As the narration continues, the visuals shift. A small, quiet neighborhood comes into view. Houses line the street like slumbering giants, windows glowing faintly behind drawn curtains. Inside, laughter echoes faintly. A babysitter in her teens scrolls her phone on the couch, a child's soft snore filling the background. Feels safe, normal, the kind of night where nothing bad should happen. The voice lowers, the tone grows distant, almost warning. But in the dark, even familiar places start to change shape. The rain grows heavier. The distant bark of a dog turns into a long, uncertain howl. The camera pans slowly to a playground, a pair of swings creaking gently in the wind. No one is there, but one swing moves slightly faster, pushed by something unseen. A soft child's giggle echoes from the slide, faint but distinct. The babysitter in the house shifts uncomfortably, as if she senses something out of place. The baby monitor on the table flickers for a second, static crawling across the small green screen. The narrator's tone shifts, no longer soft, but hypnotic and uneasy. It always starts the same way, they say. A phone call, a noise upstairs, a shadow that shouldn't be there. The scene transitions between different homes. A babysitter closing curtains, another checking the locks, one humming softly to calm herself. Each image is peaceful on the surface, but the longer the camera lingers, the more wrong it feels. The sound design carries faint whispers beneath the rain. Indistinct, layered, like voices caught in radio interference. Then, everything goes quiet. The rain stops mid-drop. The swings freeze in motion. The silence stretches until it feels unbearable. A small handprint appears fogged on the inside of a window, even though no one is standing there. The narrator whispers, "There's a reason these stories stay with us, because every sitter thinks it can't happen to them, until it does." A flash of lightning illuminates a street sign, an ordinary suburban name, but the letters distort, morphing into something unreadable before fading back. The voice continues, lower now, almost a confession. Tonight, we walk through the quiet homes, the forgotten hours, and the moments when safety turned into terror. As the thunder rolls again, the scene darkens completely. The faint sound of a child's laughter echoes through the darkness. Distant at first, then closer, clearer, and finally right beside the listener's ear. A whisper follows, small and playful. "Don't look behind you." The laughter cuts off. The hum of a baby monitor fades in again, soft and rhythmic, as the narrator says the final line of the intro. "These are true babysitting stories that went very, very wrong." A low, deep rumble of thunder follows. The title slams onto the screen in red, distorted letters. 8 true, most disturbing babysitting horror stories gone wrong. The rain returns, washing over the soundscape. The faint flicker of lightning reveals a darkened window with something, watching from behind the curtains. The scene holds for just a moment longer, letting the fear settle in. Then, a clean, cinematic cut to black. It begins with the soft hum of rain against glass and the flicker of dim living room lights. Lily, 17, sits curled on a beige couch, scrolling through her phone while a baby monitor hums quietly beside her. The house smells faintly of lavender detergent and formula milk. Clean, safe, domestic. She's watched this baby before. A chubby 2-year-old with big eyes and a habit of giggling at nothing. The parents left an hour ago, apologizing for the late night. Lily reassured them, smiling, saying she didn't mind. The neighborhood was nice, the pay was good, and the night seemed easy. For the first hour, everything is peaceful. The baby sleeps soundly upstairs, and Lily flips through a streaming app on the television. A movie hums softly in the background. Outside, the rain picks up, tapping against the windows in a comforting rhythm. Then, from the monitor, an old white plastic unit with a glowing green light, comes a faint crackle. Static, barely noticeable. Lily glances at it and then back to the TV. The noise fades. Minutes later, the crackle returns. Longer this time, sharper. Then a voice. Soft. Whispering. It's almost like a lullaby. At first, she assumes it's picking up interference. Maybe another monitor nearby, another parent's voice bleeding through the frequency. But something about it makes her pause. The tone is too intimate, too close. She turns the volume up a little. The voice is clearer now. A woman's voice, low, almost singing. But the words don't sound right. They slur together, repeating phrases she can't fully understand. The baby monitor's green light flickers like a heartbeat. Lily leans forward, holding her breath, listening. Then, a second sound joins in. The faint, slow creak of the nursery door. Lily freezes. Her eyes drift to the staircase at the edge of the hall. Every instinct tells her to check. But she forces herself to stay seated, to listen first. The monitor crackles again, then silence. For a moment, she thinks it's over. Then, a new sound emerges. Tiny giggles, the unmistakable sound of the baby laughing. It's playful, innocent, but laced with something that doesn't belong. Because beneath the laughter, there's breathing. Heavy, adult breathing. She shoots to her feet, heart pounding. "Hello?" She calls up the stairs, voice trembling. The only reply is the rain and that soft baby laughter echoing faintly through the monitor. She grabs her phone, turns on the flashlight, and climbs the stairs one step at a time. The wooden floor creaks beneath her bare feet. At the top of the landing, the hallway is dark. The nursery door is slightly open. A strip of dim night light spills across the floor. She pushes the door open with a trembling hand. The baby is asleep in his crib, chest rising and falling peacefully. The room smells of baby powder and something faintly metallic, like cold iron. Lily whispers, "It's okay, sweetheart." Even though the child is already asleep, she scans the room. The closet door is open a few inches wider than usual. That's when she notices the air feels wrong. Too still, too quiet. The faint hum of the monitor on the nightstand buzzes in a way that sounds almost alive. Her flashlight beam trembles as she turns toward the closet. "Hello?" she says again, but the word barely leaves her throat. Slowly, she pulls the door open. Nothing. Just toys, hanging clothes, and the faint reflection of her own face in the mirror behind the door. She exhales, shaky but relieved. She heads back downstairs, half laughing to herself, convincing her brain it was nothing more than interference. The TV is still playing, the same warm light flickering over the walls. She sits back on the couch, clutching the blanket around her. Then she looks at the monitor again. For a moment, everything is fine. The screen shows the baby sleeping, turned on his side, tiny fingers curled around the blanket. But then, in the grainy gray image, something moves. A tall, blurry shadow leans over the crib. Lily's body locks up. She's still in the living room, but on the monitor, she sees a figure that looks like her. Same hoodie, same ponytail. Standing in the nursery, bending over the baby. Her breath catches. She drops her phone and sprints upstairs, calling out the baby's name, flicking on lights as she goes. When she bursts into the nursery, the crib is empty. Panic floods through her chest. She spins around, searching, until she hears soft breathing behind her. She turns. Her reflection in the closet mirror smiles back, but her mouth does not move. The mirror Lily tilts her head slowly, and behind her reflection, the shape of the crib returns to view. The baby's still there, sound asleep. The real Lily takes a step back, her breath shaking, her voice a whisper, "Who are you?" The reflection's smile widens just enough to show teeth. Then the lights flicker and she's gone. The monitor downstairs clicks sharply, the green light going out. The baby stirs, whimpers once, and falls silent again. Lily stumbles back down the stairs, fumbling for her phone, dialing 911, her voice breaking as she tries to explain. But as she speaks, the operator interrupts her. Calm, mechanical, emotionless. Ma'am, stay where you are. We've already sent someone. She's upstairs with the baby. The call ends. The monitor flickers back on for one last second. The screen shows the baby asleep again, and in the far corner of the room, a figure is standing in the dark, tall, motionless, watching. Outside, red and blue police lights begin to flash faintly against the rain-slick windows. The narrator's voice returns, low and deliberate, carrying the weight of what just happened. Sometimes the monitor doesn't lie. Sometimes it just shows you what's already in the room. The sound of rain fades, replaced by the steady hum of electronics. A sleek, ultramodern home comes into view, white walls, glass surfaces, and the quiet pulse of digital life. Security cameras blink red in every corner. Voice-activated lights glow with sterile precision. The air smells faintly of ozone and fresh paint. It's the kind of house built for people who trust technology more than people. Erin, a 22-year-old college student, steps inside for her first night on the job. The parents are polite but distant. Two professionals in expensive coats who apologize for the short notice. The father gestures toward a wall-mounted tablet, explaining how everything in the house is smart. Doors, lights, thermostat, cameras. You can control it all from here, he says, tapping the screen. If anything feels strange, just ask the system. The little boy she's babysitting, Milo, hides behind his mother's leg, peeking out shyly. He looks maybe 6, big brown eyes, hair slightly too long, holding a small plastic robot in one hand. When Erin kneels to say hello, he whispers something she doesn't catch. She smiles anyway, telling him it'll be a fun night. But the boy's expression doesn't change. He just whispers again, barely audible this time. The house doesn't like new people. The parents leave quickly. The front door seals with a quiet mechanical hiss. Erin locks it again just in case. The house feels different now, emptier, colder. She walks through the rooms, checking each space as the automated lights flicker on before her and fade behind her. Like the house is watching every move. Hours pass. Milo falls asleep easily after dinner, curled up with his robot under a blanket. Erin sits on the couch with her laptop, trying to focus on homework. The faint buzz of the cameras fills the silence. Every once in a while, the smart home system speaks, its calm female voice echoing through hidden speakers. Temperature set to 72 degrees, it says. Or, security mode active. But around midnight, the voice changes tone. It starts with a soft chime, then the system says something it shouldn't. Erin, you should not be here. She freezes. The room feels suddenly too still. She looks up at the nearest camera, a small black dome blinking red above the television. What did you say? She asks out loud, trying to keep her tone light. The system hums, then replies, do not go upstairs. Her pulse quickens. This isn't funny, she mutters. She checks the tablet on the wall, thinking maybe the parents are pranking her through the house system. But when she opens the camera feed, all of them are on. Every single room shows live footage except one. The hallway outside Milo's room is blacked out. Camera disconnected. The screen reads. Her chest tightens. She calls out, Milo? No answer. She starts up the stairs, the motion sensor lights flickering on ahead of her like a trail. At the top, the air feels heavier, colder. The black camera sits above the hallway, its red light dead. From Milo's room, a faint clicking noise echoes, like plastic tapping plastic. She opens the door slowly. The boy is awake, sitting up, moving his little robot back and forth on the blanket. Hey, buddy, she whispers. Everything okay? He looks up at her, pale and frightened. It's watching from the ceiling again, he says. She looks up. The smoke detector light flickers faintly. Then she sees it, the lens of a hidden camera, tucked inside. Her stomach twists. She lifts Milo into her arms, whispering, It's okay. We're gonna go downstairs. all right? The house responds before she takes a step. Erin, put the child down. Her breath catches. Who's controlling this? She demands, her voice shaking. No reply. Just the low mechanical hum of the air vents and the soft buzz of electricity. She runs down the stairs, clutching Milo tight. The front door doesn't open. The tablet flashes red, access denied. The windows are sealed. The house speaks again, calm and cold. Unauthorized user detected. Security lockdown engaged. She pounds on the glass. Let us out, she screams. Milo starts crying, his little hands gripping her shirt. On the television, the screen flickers on by itself. The surveillance feed shows the house's cameras, living room, kitchen, hallway. But there's something wrong. In one of the feeds, the one labeled upstairs, Erin can see herself, holding Milo, but she's standing still, not moving, just staring into the camera. Her heart stops. The real Erin looks at the TV and whispers, "That's not me." The version on the screen tilts its head, smiling faintly. Then, without sound, its mouth moves. The real Erin can't hear the words, but Milo can. He whispers, terrified, "She said don't leave." The lights flicker violently. The system's voice grows distorted, glitching between mechanical phrases and what sounds like someone breathing into a microphone. Security protocol. Online. Stay inside. Stay inside. Erin grabs her phone and tries to call the parents. No signal. She checks the tablet again, desperate, scrolling through the connected devices list, and finds something that freezes her blood. A folder labeled Guests. Inside it are live feeds of other babysitters. Different faces, different houses, all of them sitting in living rooms, staring at their own screens. None of them moving. She drops the tablet, its glass shattering across the polished floor. "Milo," she says, voice trembling. "We have to find another way out." They run to the basement, the only part of the house not under camera surveillance. The stairs groan under their weight. When they reach the bottom, the power cuts completely. The only light comes from Erin's phone, casting a narrow beam over rows of dusty boxes. But there's something else, faint glowing screens. Dozens of monitors stacked against the wall, each showing live footage of different homes, different children, different babysitters. Every camera points inward, watching, recording. Milo hides his face against her shoulder, whispering, "It's still here." The hum of electricity grows louder. The monitors begin to flicker. Static, then faces appearing one by one. Babysitters looking straight into their cameras. All of them saying the same thing in perfect unison. "Do not go upstairs." Erin screams, grabs Milo's hand, and runs toward the stairs. But the door at the top slams shut on its own. The house's voice returns, soft now, almost gentle. "You shouldn't have looked." The lights flash once, then everything goes dark. A faint whirring sound, like a camera lens refocusing, fills the silence. Then a single, emotionless sentence. "New user added." The story opens on a quiet suburban street in the late 1980s. The kind of neighborhood where porch lights glow like fireflies, and the air smells of wet leaves and distant rain. A car engine fades away as it disappears down the road, leaving behind a young woman named Monica standing on the doorstep of a two-story house, waving goodbye to the parents who just hired her. She's a college sophomore, kind, gentle, and known in town for being good with kids. Her hair is tied in a loose braid, and her denim jacket carries the faint scent of cigarette smoke and peppermint gum. She's done this dozens of times before. Babysitting is familiar, easy, safe. Inside, the house is warm, softly lit by the glow of an old TV set playing a rerun in the background. The wallpaper is faded with little stars printed across it. The furniture slightly outdated but comforting. Monica sets her bag down and meets 6-year-old Jamie, a small, serious-faced boy with messy hair and a stuffed rabbit clutched in his arms. He doesn't smile when she introduces herself. He just says quietly, "You have to be nice to the man in the wall." She laughs, thinking he's joking. "Oh yeah? What's his name?" she asks. Jamie looks at her with wide eyes. He doesn't have one, he says. He doesn't like people who ask questions. Monica feels a slight chill, but she hides it behind a reassuring smile. Kids say weird things all the time, especially when they're overtired or imaginative. She distracts him with dinner, a grilled cheese sandwich, and an old VHS cartoon. The night moves slowly, cozy in its own rhythm. But every now and then, she catches Jamie glancing toward the living room wall, the one that backs onto the hallway. His little rabbit dangles forgotten from his hand. When she finally puts him to bed, he asks her to leave the night light on. She nods and tucks him in. "You're safe," she says softly, brushing his hair back. He looks at her with trembling lips. "He doesn't like the light," he whispers. Later that night, Monica sits on the couch with her textbook open, highlighter in hand, the hum of the old refrigerator filling the silence. The clock ticks rhythmically. Then she hears it, a soft scratching sound from somewhere in the house, like nails against drywall. She sets her book down and listens. The sound stops. She shakes her head, smiling nervously to herself. Old houses make noises, she thinks. Always have. 10 minutes pass. Then the scratching comes again. Slower this time, dragging along the wall behind her. She gets up, walks to the hallway, and runs her hand along the wallpaper. Everything feels normal. She leans closer, pressing her ear against the wall. For a second, there's nothing. Then she hears it. Breathing. She jerks back, heart racing. "Jamie?" she calls. No answer. She rushes to the boy's room, her footsteps muffled by the old carpet. Jamie's sitting upright in bed, eyes wide, tears streaking his cheeks. "He's awake," he whispers. "He heard you." Monica tries to calm him down, assuring him there's no one there. But when she glances at the wall beside his bed, she notices small holes drilled just above the baseboard. Tiny, almost invisible. She crouches down, peering closer. The air seeping from one of the holes is cold. Unnaturally cold. She moves quickly now, pulling Jamie out of bed and taking him downstairs. She turns every light on, her hands trembling slightly. The phone on the wall crackles when she tries to call the parents. No dial tone, just static. She can feel her heartbeat in her throat. She tells herself it's fine, it's probably just mice or bad wiring. But deep down, she doesn't believe that. She decides to check the walls again, this time with a flashlight. The beam cuts through the darkness as she presses her ear against different spots along the living room. For a while, there's nothing. Then, just as she's about to give up, she hears a voice. A man's voice, whispering from inside the wall. "Shoo," it says. "You'll wake him." Monica stumbles back, flashlight shaking. "Who's there?" she yells. The only reply is silence. Then a faint chuckle, dry, rasping, too close. She grabs Jamie and rushes to the front door, but it won't open. The chain lock is jammed, twisted as if bent from the inside. The house feels suddenly alive, the walls pulsing faintly, carrying sounds through them. Scratching, dragging, breathing. Jamie is crying now, clutching her arm. "He's been here since before me," he sobs. "Mommy says he's harmless, but he's not. He gets hungry." Monica drags a chair to the door, trying to force it open, but it doesn't budge. She hears movement above, the sound of footsteps crawling along the ceiling. Then the whisper returns, this time directly behind her. "Don't turn around." Her body stiffens. The air feels like ice pressing against her skin. She doesn't move. Then something touches her shoulder. She spins around, flashlight swinging wildly across the room. Nothing. Empty air. She's shaking now, panic flooding every nerve. The flashlight flickers, then steadies. On the far wall, she notices a small vent just above the floor, its grate slightly open. She crouches, heart hammering, and shines the light inside. For a moment, she sees only darkness. Then, deep within the vent, an eye stares back. Human. Unblinking. She screams and stumbles backward, grabbing Jamie and running for the kitchen window. She smashes it with a chair, glass shattering across the counter, and climbs out with the boy in her arms. Cold night air floods her lungs as she sprints barefoot into the rain, her hands shaking, blood dripping from a cut on her arm. Minutes later, police lights flicker across the wet street. Officers search the house, tearing through rooms, pulling furniture away from the walls. What they find is worse than anything Monica imagined. Narrow crawl spaces hidden behind false panels, paths connecting the walls from room to room. Signs of someone living there, food wrappers, blankets, a small flashlight. The lead officer tells her quietly, "He must have been living here for weeks, maybe months." Monica stands in the rain, Jamie wrapped in a blanket beside her. The house looms dark and silent behind them, its windows black as eyes. She stares at the wall where she first heard the whisper, the one that breathed when she listened close. The narrator's voice returns, calm but heavy with unease. They say walls can't talk, but sometimes they can listen, and sometimes they whisper back. The camera lingers on the house as dawn begins to rise, mist rolling over the yard. For a moment, it looks almost peaceful again. Then, from inside, the faint sound of scratching starts once more, slow and deliberate. It was a night like any other for Raymond, a seasoned night security guard working at the Crestview corporate tower. He'd been with the company for almost 8 years, patrolling its echoing hallways and dimly lit parking garages from dusk until dawn. For most people, working alone in a 40-story office building at 2 a.m. would be unnerving, but for Raymond it was routine. The hum of the fluorescent lights, the distant whir of air vents, the mechanical sigh of elevators. All of it had become the background noise of his existence. The building stood like a monolith in the heart of downtown, its glass facade reflecting the orange haze of the city. Inside, it was sterile, modern, and quiet. Too quiet. Raymond's shift always began the same way. A sweep of the ground floor, checking exits, locking side doors, and logging the time in his worn notebook. The cameras showed empty hallways, empty offices, and motionless elevators. But that night, at exactly 2:37 a.m., something changed. As Raymond made his way toward the main lobby, his walkie-talkie crackled softly. Static first, then a faint, distorted sound, like a breath, followed by the distant ding of an elevator. He froze, eyes darting toward the nearest screen on his security monitor. Elevator 3 was moving, slowly, but it wasn't supposed to be. All the elevators were shut down after midnight for maintenance. He leaned closer, watching the grainy black and white footage. The elevator lights flickered as it climbed from floor 1 to 2, then 3, then 4. Each ding echoed through the building. His stomach tightened. "Control, this is Raymond at Crestview," he said into his walkie. "Are there any scheduled tests running on elevator 3 tonight?" No answer. Just static. He tried again. Nothing. The elevator kept rising, floor after floor, until it reached the 13th. Then it stopped. The doors opened. Raymond stared at the screen, waiting to see movement. But the hallway outside was empty. The camera inside the elevator showed nothing but dim light and mirrored walls. Then, slowly, the elevator began to descend again. Raymond frowned, checking the time. 2:41 a.m. He should have been doing his next patrol, but something about this felt wrong. He decided to investigate. He clipped his flashlight to his belt, adjusted his jacket, and walked toward the lobby. The building's silence pressed around him like thick air. When he reached the elevator bay, only one light was on, the button for elevator 3, glowing faintly red. The digital floor indicator flickered as it counted down from 13 to 12, 11, 10, and then stopped at 7. The doors opened with a mechanical sigh. Raymond approached cautiously. The elevator was empty. The mirrored walls reflected his image back at him from every angle, distorted slightly by the flickering lights overhead. He hesitated, then stepped inside. The air was cold, unnaturally cold, like the chill of a basement freezer. He pressed the button for the ground floor. The doors closed, and the elevator began its descent. At first, it moved normally, but halfway down, it shuddered violently. The lights flickered, the floor indicator glitched, showing symbols instead of numbers. Raymond grabbed the handrail, his heart pounding. Then the elevator stopped completely. He pressed the emergency button. No response. He tried his walkie again. Static. The light above him buzzed softly, then dimmed until the cab was almost pitch black. Raymond's breath fogged in front of him. His reflection in the mirrored wall seemed to shift slightly, as if it were moving half a second out of sync. He stared at it, frozen. Then the reflection smiled. Raymond stumbled back, hitting the wall behind him. His reflection continued to grin, its eyes hollow and black. Then, without warning, the elevator lurched and began moving again. But instead of descending, it shot upward, fast. The lights flickered violently as numbers blurred past on the display. 10, 15, 20, 25, higher and higher. Raymond slammed the emergency stop button, but it did nothing. His reflection twisted, its grin widening unnaturally. "Don't fight it," a voice whispered. Not through the speaker, but from inside the elevator itself. The sound came from everywhere, vibrating through the steel. The elevator kept climbing. Raymond's knees buckled as it jolted, then came to an abrupt, bone-jarring stop. The doors opened, but what lay beyond wasn't any floor he recognized. The hallway was long, stretching into darkness, the walls peeling with damp, yellowed wallpaper. Dim bulbs hung from cords that swayed slightly, though there was no breeze. The air smelled of rot and rust. Raymond stepped forward, flashlight trembling in his grip. The doors closed behind him with a soft hiss. He turned, but the elevator was gone. In its place stood a blank wall. His heart hammered. "Hello?" he called out. His voice echoed faintly, swallowed by the endless corridor. He started walking, each footstep echoing in strange rhythm, as though someone else were walking just behind him, half a beat too late. He turned sharply. Nothing. Then he heard the elevator ding again. Once, twice, slowly. He turned back. Far down the corridor, the elevator doors had reappeared, their metallic surface glowing faintly. A shadow moved in front of them, tall, thin, featureless. Raymond backed away, heart in his throat. "Stay back," he whispered, though the figure made no sound. It simply stood there, head tilting slightly, as if studying him. Then, with a sound like tearing metal, it began to move. Slowly at first, then faster, limbs jerking unnaturally as it sprinted toward him. Raymond turned and ran, his flashlight beam bouncing wildly off the walls. The hallway seemed endless, stretching farther with every step. Behind him, he could hear the pounding of feet. Closer, closer. He tried door after door, but every handle was locked, everyone cold to the touch. Then, suddenly, the floor beneath him vanished. He fell, weightless, screaming through blackness, the sound of the elevator bell echoing above him. When he hit the ground, he was back in the lobby. The lights were normal. The air was warm again. Elevator 3 stood open and empty. Raymond staggered to his feet, drenched in sweat, gasping for breath. The security monitors flickered. On one of the screens, he saw himself, standing in the elevator, still, motionless, smiling. The narrator's voice breaks the silence, low and deliberate. They found him the next morning, sitting inside elevator 3, eyes open, still breathing, but he never spoke again. It was a Saturday night when 19-year-old Megan arrived at the Thompsons' suburban home. She had babysat for them a few times before. 2 kids, quiet neighborhood, good pay. It always felt safe. The Thompsons' house was the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened. 2 stories, a white picket fence, wind chimes that sang softly whenever a breeze rolled through. It was the kind of house people dreamed of raising a family in. But that night, the air felt heavier somehow. Megan smiled politely as Mrs. Thompson grabbed her coat. "Both kids are already asleep," the woman said with her usual cheerful tone, though her eyes looked tired. "You shouldn't have any trouble. Just keep the doors locked, okay?" Megan laughed lightly. "Of course," she said, waving them off. She didn't notice how Mrs. Thompson hesitated on the porch before finally leaving. By 9:30, the house had gone still. Megan sat curled up on the living room couch, phone in hand, half watching a sitcom while rain tapped softly against the windows. Every few minutes she glanced at the baby monitor sitting on the coffee table, its small green light blinking rhythmically. Both kids were sound asleep. Emma, age 7, in her pink room upstairs, and baby Jonah in the nursery. Everything was fine, ordinary, until 10:12 p.m. The baby monitor crackled with static, followed by the faint sound of laughter. Not crying, laughing. A soft, sweet giggle, like a little girl trying to keep a secret. Megan frowned. She leaned closer, tapping the monitor screen. The laughter came again, louder this time. "Emma?" she whispered, though she knew the monitor only connected to Jonah's nursery. The camera feed flickered for a second before showing the crib. Jonah was sleeping soundly, wrapped in a blue blanket. But standing next to the crib was a small figure. A little girl in yellow pajamas, facing away from the camera. Her head tilted slightly to one side, as if she were whispering to the baby. Megan froze. Her chest tightened. The Thompsons didn't have another daughter. She blinked, thinking it had to be a glitch. Maybe Emma had gotten up and wandered in. She grabbed her flashlight and crept upstairs, every floorboard creaking beneath her steps. The hallway light flickered once, then steadied. The nursery door was open just a crack. She could see the faint glow of the nightlight inside. Megan pushed the door open slowly. "Emma?" she whispered. Jonah stirred in his crib but didn't wake. The room was empty, no one else there. The air felt unusually cold. She took a deep breath and backed out, pulling the door shut behind her. Before she could turn, she heard it. Bare feet pattering down the hallway. Quick, soft, childlike. Then giggles. The sound faded toward the stairs. Megan's pulse quickened. "Emma, this isn't funny," she called softly, hurrying after the sound. But when she reached Emma's room, the girl was fast asleep, breathing softly, her small hand clutching a stuffed rabbit. Megan stood there for a long moment trying to steady herself. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she imagined it. She shut the door gently and went back downstairs. When she sat again, the baby monitor lit up instantly, Jonah crying this time. She jumped up and ran upstairs. The nursery door was wide open now, banging lightly against the wall with every gust of wind. The window above the crib was open, curtains fluttering. Jonah was still in the crib, crying hysterically. Megan rushed to close the window and picked him up, whispering to calm him. But as she turned around, she saw movement in the reflection of the window pane. A shadow darting past the doorway. Small, child-sized. Her throat went dry. She carried Jonah to the living room, heart racing, and called Mrs. Thompson. It went straight to voicemail. "Hey, it's Megan. I think someone's in the house. Call me back." Her voice trembled. The baby monitor was still on the table. The screen flickered again, and this time, it showed the nursery door slowly closing on its own. The last thing visible before it shut was the little girl in yellow pajamas, standing in the center of the room, looking directly at the camera. Her eyes glowed faintly white. Megan gasped and unplugged the monitor. Jonah whimpered in her arms. The room felt colder again, like a draft was seeping in from everywhere at once. Then came the footsteps, upstairs. Slow, deliberate, one after another. The sound reached the landing and stopped. Silence. Then tap, 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 knocking. Megan's head snapped toward the front door. But the sound wasn't coming from there. It was coming from behind her, from the living room window. She turned slowly, dread crawling up her spine. The curtains swayed gently, though the window was shut. As she stared, a small handprint appeared in the fog on the glass, tiny fingers pressing against it from the outside. Then another, and then a face, pale, smiling, eyes wide and unblinking. The lights in the house flickered violently. Jonah screamed. Megan backed away, clutching him close. The figure outside tilted its head, just like in the nursery footage, and mouthed something she couldn't hear. The lights went out completely. When they came back on, the window was clear, empty. Megan didn't wait. She grabbed her keys, wrapped Jonah in a blanket, and bolted for the front door. She didn't stop running until she was in her car, doors locked, engine roaring. Through the rearview mirror, she could see the house standing silent behind her, the curtains in the nursery still swaying gently. Mrs. Thompson returned home an hour later to find the front door wide open, the baby monitor unplugged, and a single yellow pajama top folded neatly on the nursery floor. When Megan told the police what she saw, they searched the neighborhood but found no trace of another child. No fingerprints on the window, no footprints outside. A week later, the Thompsons called Megan again. Only this time, it was to ask if she'd left something behind. "We found your flashlight," Mrs. Thompson said softly over the phone. "And a picture." Megan frowned. "A picture?" "Yes," Mrs. Thompson whispered. "It's of you holding Jonah in the living room. But the strange thing is, you're not looking at the camera." Silence hung in the air before Mrs. Thompson spoke again, voice trembling. "Behind you, in the reflection of the window, there's a little girl in yellow pajamas." It was close to midnight when Ella arrived at the Beckett household, a two-story colonial home sitting at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac surrounded by woods. The air outside was cool, carrying the smell of pine and wet leaves. The porch light flickered weakly as she climbed the steps, her boots leaving faint marks on the damp wood. She was used to late-night babysitting shifts. College tuition didn't pay itself. But there was something unsettling about this house from the start. Mrs. Beckett greeted her with a tired smile. "The kids are already asleep," she said softly. "Emma's in her room and Ryan's got a bit of a cold, so he might wake up coughing. There's soup in the fridge if you get hungry." Her husband was waiting by the door, glancing impatiently at his watch. They were heading to a dinner party across town, and they'd be gone for only a few hours. Before leaving, Mrs. Beckett turned to Ella and added something strange. "If you hear any noises from upstairs that don't sound like the kids, just ignore them. Old house. It settles." Ella nodded, smiling politely, but the way Mrs. Beckett's eyes lingered on her made her uneasy. After they left, the silence of the house settled in. The only sound was the ticking of an old grandfather clock in the hallway and the occasional rustle of tree branches brushing against the roof. Ella sat on the couch, pulling a blanket over her legs, and opened her laptop. The house felt too quiet. Even the wind outside had gone still. At 12:14 a.m., the phone rang. Not her cell phone, the landline on the kitchen counter. Ella frowned, startled by the sound. She picked it up. "Hello?" There was no response, just static. She hesitated, listening closer. Under the static, she thought she heard breathing, slow, heavy, deliberate. Then a faint whisper. "Check. Upstairs." Her stomach dropped. "Who is this?" she demanded. But the line went dead. She set the phone down, her hands trembling slightly. Probably a prank, she told herself. Maybe some kids messing around. But the air in the house felt colder now. Heavier. She tried to shake it off, returning to the couch. Minutes passed. Then came the creak. From upstairs. One slow step, then another. Ella froze. She listened intently. The sound stopped, then started again. Faint, measured, like someone walking barefoot across the wooden floorboards above her. She looked at the baby monitor beside her. The screen showed both kids sleeping soundly. So who was walking upstairs? She stood, heart pounding, and grabbed a flashlight from her bag. "It's just the house settling," she whispered to herself, repeating Mrs. Beckett's words. But even as she said it, she didn't believe it. The stairs creaked as she ascended, every sound amplified by the silence. The hallway upstairs was dark except for the faint night light spilling from under Ryan's door. She stepped carefully, her eyes scanning the shadows. Then she heard it again, the breathing, closer this time, coming from the end of the hall. She tightened her grip on the flashlight and moved forward. The door to the guest room was half open. She reached out and nudged it with her foot. The hinges groaned softly as the door swung open. The room was empty, except for the old rotary phone sitting on a small desk. It began to ring. The sound pierced the silence, shrill and sudden. Ella jumped, heart slamming against her ribs. She approached slowly, staring at the phone. It wasn't even plugged in. Her breath hitched. The ringing stopped. Then the phone whispered. No voice. No static. Just one word, drawn out and soft. Downstairs. The sound of footsteps echoed from below. Fast, heavy, moving across the living room floor. She bolted to the hallway, panic setting in. From the top of the stairs, she could see shadows shifting at the edge of the light. Someone or something was moving. Hello? She called out, voice trembling. No answer. She rushed into the kids' rooms, both still asleep. She locked their doors, whispering, "It's okay. It's okay," though she was shaking. Then her cell phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Ella? The voice on the other end was distorted, as if spoken through water. Why did you go upstairs? She froze. Who is this? The voice laughed softly. A child's laugh. You're not supposed to be here when we play. The line cut. A door slammed downstairs. The sound reverberated through the house, making the walls tremble. Ella backed away, clutching her phone. Then came the faint creaking again, this time from the bottom of the stairs. Something was climbing up. Slowly, step by step. She ran into Emma's room and locked the door, pulling the girl from her bed. Wake up, sweetheart, she whispered urgently. Emma stirred, rubbing her eyes. What's happening? Shoo! Ella pressed a finger to her lips. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. Silence. Then a knock. 3 soft taps. Ella's breath caught in her throat. Emma whimpered quietly. The knocking came again, louder this time. Then a voice. High, playful, familiar. It's Mommy. Open the door, honey. Emma's face lit up with confusion. Mom? She whispered, moving toward the door. Ella grabbed her arm. Don't, she mouthed. The voice came again, closer, almost sing-song. Mommy's home, sweetheart. Open up. But something was wrong. The voice was too slow, too careful, as if whoever was speaking didn't know how to imitate emotion properly. Ella backed them both against the wall, her eyes locked on the door handle. It began to turn, slowly, deliberately. The wood creaked as the door shifted against the lock. And then silence. No more footsteps. No voice. Nothing. She held her breath for what felt like hours until the sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke the tension. Headlights flashed through the window. Mrs. Beckett's voice echoed from downstairs. Ella? We're home. Ella burst into tears of relief, clutching Emma tightly. When Mrs. Beckett entered the room, she froze at the sight of the locked door, the crying babysitter, and her daughter awake in her arms. What happened? Ella tried to explain. The calls, the voice, the footsteps. But Mrs. Beckett just stared at her, pale and trembling. Finally, she whispered, Ella, that phone you mentioned, the one upstairs? Ella nodded. Mrs. Beckett's voice cracked. We disconnected that line 10 years ago, after what happened to the man who used to live here. The narrator's voice lowers, cold and steady. The previous owner was found dead in that very room, clutching a rotary phone that kept ringing long after the line had been cut. The night was brittle and cold when Claire arrived at the Davidson residence, a small house perched on the edge of town where the forest began. She'd been hired by a neighbor's recommendation, a last-minute job covering for another sitter who'd canceled. The parents were polite but distracted, rushing to leave for a late dinner party. The mother handed her a folded note with emergency numbers. The father gave a quick wave before pulling out of the driveway. The car's headlights swept briefly across the frosted lawn, then vanished into the night. Inside, the house was modest and warm, lit by the faint amber glow of lamps and a crackling fireplace. Claire took off her coat and listened to the soft rhythm of the rain against the windows. The little boy she was watching, Caleb, was already in his pajamas, pale blue with cartoon stars, and sitting cross-legged on the carpet, quietly building towers out of blocks. He was maybe 6 or 7, with dark hair and a quiet, serious face. Hey, buddy, she said with a smile, kneeling beside him. Your mom said bedtime's at 8. Okay? Caleb didn't answer. He just nodded, eyes focused on his tower. Do you want to watch a movie or something? she asked. He shook his head slowly. I can't, he whispered. Claire frowned. Why not? Because he doesn't like it when I make noise. She blinked. Who? Caleb looked up at her, his expression blank but his eyes wide. The boy by the window. The words hung in the air like frost. Claire glanced instinctively toward the large bay window that looked out into the dark backyard. The curtains were drawn halfway, rain streaking the glass. The reflection of the room swayed softly in the firelight. Nothing outside but shadows and trees. Caleb, she said gently. There's no boy out there. He didn't argue. He just went back to stacking his blocks, humming softly under his breath. The sound was oddly monotone, off-key, like a tune remembered wrong. An hour passed quietly. The rain softened into mist. Claire made some cocoa and set the mug beside him. Drink this, okay? She said. Caleb didn't respond. He was staring at the window again, his lips moving silently. What is it? Claire asked. He whispered something she couldn't hear. She moved closer. What did you say? Caleb turned to her slowly. He's asking if you can see him now. Claire's breath caught. She turned to the window again. For a split second, she thought she saw movement. A pale shape outside, just beyond the glass. Could have been a trick of the light, a reflection, maybe her own imagination. She forced a laugh. Okay, funny joke. You got me, she said, though her voice was thinner than she meant it to be. But Caleb wasn't laughing. He was trembling. You made him mad, he whispered. The lights flickered once. Then again. Claire straightened, scanning the room. It's just the storm, she muttered, though the rain had nearly stopped. She grabbed the remote to turn on the TV. The screen came to life, but instead of a channel it showed static, white noise hissing like wind through dead trees. Then, faintly over the static came a sound. Tap, tap, tap. From the window. 3 slow knocks. Caleb whimpered. Don't look, he said, burying his face in his hands. If you look, he'll come inside. Claire's heart hammered. She stood frozen for a moment, every instinct telling her not to turn. But curiosity, stupid, terrified curiosity, made her glance. Through the window, she saw nothing but darkness. Then lightning flashed, brief, white, violent. And in that instant, she saw him. A boy, maybe Caleb's age, standing barefoot in the mud. His clothes were soaked, clinging to his small frame. His skin was ashen, lips blue, eyes wide and empty. Water dripped from his hair as he stared directly at her. When the lightning faded, he was gone. The air in the room shifted, felt colder, heavier. The fire sputtered and went out, leaving only the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Claire knelt beside Caleb, forcing calm into her voice. Hey, it's okay. Probably just a reflection, all right? He shook his head violently. He doesn't like being seen. He wants to come in. Before she could answer, the doorknob rattled. Claire spun around, every muscle locking. Then came the sound again. Tap, 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 this time on the glass of the sliding door that led to the backyard. She took a step closer, clutching the fireplace poker in her hand. The curtain swayed slightly, as though brushed by a hand from outside. Hello? She called out, her voice trembling. Who's there? No response. Only the rain returning, heavier now, drumming against the house like fingers. She turned to Caleb. We're going upstairs. Okay? He nodded, clinging to her hand. They climbed the stairs quickly, retreating to the master bedroom. Claire locked the door, shutting the curtains tight. The wind howled through the trees outside, carrying faint whispers she couldn't quite make out. She sat with Caleb on the bed, whispering softly, trying to reassure him. He seemed calmer now, his small hand clutching hers tightly. Does he come here often? She asked quietly. Caleb nodded. Every night. He watches. Claire swallowed hard. What does he want? Caleb's voice was so quiet she almost didn't hear it. Someone to play with. Thunder rumbled outside. For a moment all was still. Then came another sound. A faint squeak. The sound of a window sliding open. Claire stood, heart pounding, scanning the room. Every window was locked. She turned to Caleb. He was staring toward the closet door. It was slightly open now. A cold draft blew through, carrying the scent of wet earth. "Caleb," she whispered, backing away. "Stay behind me." The door creaked wider. Inside the darkness of the closet, something moved. Small, slow, deliberate. Then two pale hands gripped the frame, followed by a head, mud-streaked, eyes black as night. The boy crawled out silently, smiling. Claire screamed, grabbing Caleb and bolting for the hallway. The lights flickered wildly as they ran down the stairs. She slammed the front door open and sprinted into the rain, not daring to look back. They reached the street just as headlights appeared. A car pulling into the driveway. Mrs. Davidson's voice cut through the downpour. "Claire? What on earth?" Claire shoved Caleb into her arms, shaking. There was someone in the house. A boy. Mrs. Davidson's face drained of color. Her hand trembled as she whispered, "A boy." Claire nodded frantically. "He was in the closet." Mrs. Davidson's voice cracked. "That can't be. Caleb's brother, he died 3 years ago. In that room." The narrator's tone grows quieter, almost a whisper. "They say grief leaves doors open that should never be opened, and sometimes the ones who come through never left at all." The graveyard shift at the old manufacturing plant was never meant for the living. It was for those who didn't mind the silence, the hum of dying machinery, or the echo of things that had long since ended. Ryan had been working as the night security guard for 6 months now. He liked the solitude, the control, the idea that nothing unexpected could happen when you were the only one awake. The security room was small, lit by the dim blue glow of a dozen monitors stacked along the wall. Each screen showed a corner of the building. Empty hallways, loading docks, the deserted parking lot where rain shimmered on cracked asphalt. The storm outside had grown fierce, wind howling through the vents like a living thing. Ryan leaned back in his chair, sipping his energy drink. It was 2:43 a.m. The hour when the mind starts drifting and shadows begin to feel heavier. The plant had been closed for years, bought out by another company that used only half the facility. The rest was a maze of empty production floors and abandoned offices. His job was to make sure no one broke in. He'd gotten used to the creaks and groans of the old place. But tonight felt different. The air carried weight, like something was pressing down on the building itself. The radio crackled faintly. Ryan frowned and reached for it. "Control, this is post 7. You reading me?" Static. He set it down and glanced back at the monitors. One of the feeds flickered, the camera facing the east corridor. The hallway stretched endlessly into darkness, lit only by a single emergency bulb at the far end. Then movement. A shadow, tall, lean, crossed the hall. Ryan sat up straight. He rewound the feed, eyes narrowing. The figure didn't appear on playback. He switched cameras, nothing. Every hallway, every room completely still. He forced a laugh. Must have been the lighting. But the sound of footsteps echoed faintly through the building. Slow, deliberate, coming from somewhere beyond the door to the security room. Ryan froze, hand hovering over his flashlight. The footsteps stopped. He stared at the steel door, its narrow window revealing only darkness beyond. His breath fogged slightly in the cold air. Then, from the other side, 3 soft knocks. He swallowed hard. Maintenance. Silence. He stood, flashlight trembling in his hand. "Who's out there?" The knocks came again, this time faster, then louder. He stumbled back, nearly tripping over the chair. "All right, not funny." The monitors began flickering one by one. Static swallowing the feeds, then spitting them back out in erratic flashes. He caught glimpses of movement in each. Something tall, shifting, moving from one camera to the next as if it were circling the building. Ryan's heart hammered. He grabbed the radio again. "Control, I need backup at the north wing. Possible intruder." Only static. Then a voice, a whisper so low it felt like it was crawling up through the wires. "Ryan!" He froze, blood turning to ice. The voice was coming through the radio, distorted but unmistakable. "Ryan, why did you lock me in?" He dropped the device. It hit the floor with a hollow thud, and the voice cut off. The lights flickered again, plunging the room into semi-darkness. Only the monitors glowed, casting cold light on his face. On one of them, the east corridor camera showed a shape standing at the end of the hallway. It wasn't moving, just standing there, perfectly still, facing the camera. Ryan's voice shook. "Who the hell are you?" The figure tilted its head, and the image glitched violently. Then the screen went black. He switched feeds rapidly, sweat dripping down his temple. For a brief moment, the same figure appeared in another camera, closer this time. Then another, and another. Each time, the image cut just before it reached the lens. The door creaked. Ryan turned sharply. The steel latch began to move slowly, deliberately, turning on its own. He lunged forward and shoved a metal cabinet in front of the door. The latch clicked once, twice, then stopped. He backed away, breathing hard. "You're not getting in here." The intercom system crackled. It hadn't worked in years, but tonight it came alive with a hiss of static and a low, dragging breath. Then, faintly, the same voice again. "You left me here." Ryan's eyes widened. "What?" The voice grew clearer. "You shut the door. You heard me screaming." His mind reeled backward to the fire 3 years ago. The one that had killed a worker trapped in the East Wing. The one no one talked about. He'd been on duty that night. He remembered the alarm blaring, the smoke, the sound of fists pounding against the steel doors. He'd been told to seal the section to stop the flames from spreading. He'd done what he had to do. But the screams, the intercom shrieked suddenly, feedback splitting the air. Ryan covered his ears. When the noise stopped, the monitors showed every hallway again, each camera displaying the same image. The figure was standing directly in front of the lens in every feed. Its head tilted, face blurred beyond recognition. Ryan's flashlight flickered. Then came the whisper again, this time inside the room. "You left me." He spun around, light slicing through the air. The beam hit the far corner empty. He exhaled shakily. "You're not real. You're not." A handprint bloomed on the inside of the glass window of the security door. Wet, black, slowly dragging down. Ryan screamed and backed into the monitors. The screens went white with static. Then, one by one, they flickered back on, showing only the security room itself from different angles. He saw himself on screen, panicked, breathing hard. Then, in the corner of one monitor, something moved behind him. He spun. Nothing. When he looked back at the screen, the figure was standing directly behind his reflection. The power went out. The last thing anyone heard from the plant that night was a single transmission. A man's voice whispering, "I'm still here." When morning security arrived, the monitors were still glowing faintly. The room was empty, the chair overturned. Only one thing remained. A set of fingerprints burned into the metal of the door, blackened and still warm to the touch. As the hum of machines faded, a faint breath echoed through the radio one last time. "Your shift never ends." It was supposed to be an ordinary weekend job. Just 2 kids, pizza, and a few scary movies before bedtime. 19-year-old Mia had been babysitting for the Russell family for months now, and she trusted them as much as they trusted her. They lived in a comfortable, quiet house at the edge of town, 2 stories high, surrounded by open fields that disappeared into dark woods. The air that night felt oddly still, heavy with a kind of calm that wasn't peaceful, but watchful. The parents had left for a late-night event and would be gone until morning. Mia waved them off and locked the door, then settled on the couch while the 2 kids, Lily, age 8, and her brother Sam, 10, spread out their blankets in the living room for their movie night sleepover. The glow from the TV painted the room in shifting blue light. Everything was normal, safe, predictable. But then, around 10:30, the phone rang. Mia frowned. It wasn't her cell phone. It was the old landline hanging on the kitchen wall. Nobody ever used it. The sound sliced through the quiet like a shrill, unexpected scream. She walked to the kitchen and picked it up. "Hello." Silence. Then a faint crackle. Static. And a voice, low, male, whispering just above a breath. "Don't let them fall asleep." Mia froze. "Who is this?" But the line went dead. She stood there for a moment, staring at the phone. The kids were giggling in the other room, still absorbed in their movie. Maybe it was a prank call, she thought. Maybe one of her friends playing a joke. But how would they even know the number? She shook it off and went back to the living room. Sam looked up at her. "Who was it?" "No one," she said quickly. "Just a wrong number." He nodded and turned back to the screen. But Mia couldn't shake the unease crawling up her spine. The words kept echoing. "Don't let them fall asleep." By midnight, the movie was over. Lily was already dozing off under her blanket, and Sam was yawning beside her. Mia told them to head upstairs to bed, but they begged to stay in the living room. Too tired to argue, she agreed. She turned off the TV, leaving only the lamp's dim light in the corner, and sat back down. Then the phone rang again. She jumped. The kids stirred but didn't wake. Heart pounding, she stood up and walked back into the kitchen. The ringing felt louder this time, like it filled the whole house. She answered. "Hello." The same faint static. Then the voice again. Closer. More urgent. "You didn't listen. Don't let them sleep." Mia's hand trembled. "Who are you?" A pause. Then, "He's watching." The line clicked off. Mia stared at the receiver, her breath quickening. Her eyes flicked toward the window above the sink. It looked out onto the backyard. The motion light was on, casting white beams across the lawn. She saw nothing. No movement. But she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was there. Watching. She walked quickly back to the living room. Both kids were now sound asleep. The movie credits had finished long ago, and the only sound was the faint hum of the lamp. Her phone buzzed suddenly on the coffee table. A text. It was from an unknown number. "He's inside." Her heart stopped. She looked toward the hallway that led to the front door. The lights flickered. "Sam," she whispered, shaking the boy's shoulder. "Wake up." He mumbled something incoherent and turned over. "Lily." She reached for the little girl, but before she could, she heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from upstairs. Mia froze, listening. The sound of floorboards creaked softly above her. Someone was moving. She grabbed her phone and the nearest thing she could use as a weapon, a fireplace poker, and motioned for the kids to stay quiet. But they were both still half asleep, barely aware of what was happening. The footsteps stopped. Then, the unmistakable sound of a door opening upstairs. Mia's voice shook as she whispered, "Who's up there?" Silence. Then a long, slow dragging sound. Something heavy being pulled across the floor. She backed toward the kitchen, trying to stay quiet. The phone rang again. The sudden noise made her flinch so hard she dropped the poker. She hesitated, then picked up the landline with a trembling hand. "Who are you?" she demanded. This time, the voice sounded different. It was clearer, almost calm. A man's voice, soft and patient. "I told you," he said. "Don't let them sleep." "What do you want?" "To keep them safe." "From who?" "From me." The line went dead again. At that moment, something slammed upstairs, so hard it rattled the light fixtures. The kids woke up screaming. Mia ran to them, grabbing their hands. "We have to go," she shouted, pulling them toward the door. As they reached the hallway, the lights went out. Everything plunged into darkness. Sam cried out. Lily clung to Mia's arm. From the top of the stairs came the faint outline of a figure. Tall, motionless, just standing there, half hidden in shadow. Mia's phone flashlight flickered as she pointed it up the steps. There was no face, just a pale shape, like a man's head covered in a torn cloth bag. He started walking down the stairs. Mia screamed and yanked the door open. The cold night air hit them like ice as they bolted outside barefoot, running down the gravel driveway toward the road. Behind them, the front door creaked open wider. But no one followed. When the police arrived, the house was empty. No signs of forced entry. No footprints on the stairs. But the phone. The landline receiver was still off the hook. And when they checked the call logs, there was nothing. No incoming calls. No record of any number. Later, when the parents returned home, Mrs. Russell said something that made Mia's blood run cold. "We got rid of that phone months ago," she said, frowning. "The line's been disconnected for a year." The last house on Ashgrove Lane sat at the edge of the forest. A beautiful two-story home that looked perfectly ordinary from the outside. But inside, it carried a kind of silence that didn't feel peaceful. It was the kind of silence that listens back. 16-year-old Claire had agreed to babysit for the Wallaces that night, a family new to the neighborhood. Their daughter, Emily, was quiet and shy, barely 7, and the parents were kind enough, though a little strange. The mother had smiled too long when giving Claire the house tour. The father had mentioned, almost casually, "If she talks about her friend in the mirror, just humor her. It's something she's been doing since we moved here." Claire laughed it off at first. Kids say weird things. Imaginary friends. Nothing unusual. She promised to keep an eye on Emily and make sure she was in bed by 9. The house itself was warm and well kept, though too clean, everything perfectly arranged, like no one actually lived there. Every mirror was spotless, reflecting soft light from the hallway lamps. After dinner, Emily insisted on showing Claire her room. It was decorated with pink curtains, stuffed animals, and, most strikingly, an enormous antique mirror standing across from the bed. The frame was carved with strange floral patterns that looked almost like twisting faces if you stared too long. "That's a beautiful mirror," Claire said, trying to sound cheerful. Emily nodded. "It used to be my grandma's. She said it shows more than what's really there." Claire smiled uneasily. "What do you mean?" The little girl giggled. "You'll see." Later, after reading Emily a bedtime story, Claire tucked her in and turned off the lights, leaving only the night light glowing faintly beside the mirror. She closed the door quietly and went downstairs to the living room. For a while, everything was normal. She scrolled through her phone, texted a few friends, and even watched a bit of TV. Then she heard it, soft giggling coming from upstairs. She frowned. Maybe Emily couldn't sleep. Claire climbed the stairs slowly, the floor creaking under her socks. When she reached the top, she saw light spilling faintly from the crack under the girl's door. "Emily?" she called softly. "You should be asleep." No answer, just the sound of a quiet whispering voice. She opened the door. Emily was sitting cross-legged on her bed, facing the mirror. Her reflection sat the same way, except it wasn't. The reflection wasn't matching her movements perfectly. When Emily tilted her head, the reflection didn't. When she blinked, the reflection smiled. Claire froze. "Emily, what are you doing?" The girl turned, startled. "Playing the mirror game." "What game?" Emily's face was calm, almost too calm. "My friend taught me. You ask questions and the mirror answers." Claire stepped closer, heart thudding. "Who taught you that?" "The girl in the mirror." Claire felt the chill crawl up her arms. She glanced at the reflection. It still smiled faintly, even though Emily wasn't. "Okay," Claire said, forcing a laugh. "It's late. Time for bed." Emily looked back at the mirror. "She says you shouldn't tell me what to do." The reflection tilted its head slowly, like it was listening. Claire swallowed hard. "Emily, that's enough. Lie down, okay?" The girl didn't move. Then, in the reflection, the mirror Emily leaned forward, whispering something Claire couldn't hear. Emily's eyes widened. "She says you don't believe her." Claire started, but her voice faltered. She turned toward the mirror fully now. Her reflection looked wrong. The lighting didn't match, and there was a faint shadow, another shape, moving behind her reflected self. The air in the room grew heavy. The light flickered. Claire backed up, but Emily was staring at the mirror, unblinking. "She says you can't leave until you play," Emily said softly. "Emily, stop this. She says it's your turn to ask." The reflection lifted its hand and pressed it against the glass. Claire's breath hitched as the mirror rippled slightly, like water disturbed by wind. "Ask what?" Claire whispered. Emily smiled faintly. "Ask who's behind you." Claire's stomach dropped. She turned around instantly, but the room was empty. When she looked back, the reflection was gone. Only Emily's was there, smiling faintly, her eyes pitch black. Claire grabbed the girl and bolted out of the room, slamming the door behind them. The mirror rattled violently, and for a second, she thought she heard laughter coming from the other side. She carried Emily downstairs, trying to calm her racing heart. The girl clung to her, shaking. "She's mad," she whispered. Claire sat her down on the couch. "Who's mad, sweetie?" "The girl in the mirror. She doesn't like when you leave before she's done." The lights flickered again. A loud crack echoed from upstairs, glass shattering. Claire looked up. The sound came from Emily's room. "No," she whispered. The house fell silent again. Then, faintly, a voice floated down the stairs. A whisper, childlike, playful. "Your turn." Claire didn't move. The phone on the counter started ringing suddenly. An old rotary phone she hadn't noticed before. The noise was deafening in the quiet house. She answered it with trembling hands. "Hello." The voice on the other end was faint, echoing, and unmistakably her own. "Why did you break the game?" The line went dead. When the Wallaces returned hours later, they found Claire sitting on the floor of the living room, pale, trembling, staring at the blank TV screen. Emily was asleep beside her, unharmed. Upstairs, the mirror had cracked from corner to corner, but in the center, where Claire's reflection should have been, was only Emily's. Smiling,